Hi everybody, this video is about the dural venous sinuses and its clinical anatomy, and I am Dr. Lakshmi Gayatri. The venous blood of brain, meninges, cranial bones, internal ear and orbit are drained by a complex network of venous channels called dural venous sinuses. They lie between the endosteal and meningeal layers of cranial dura mater. They are lined by endothelium, but unlike veins, these sinuses have no valves and are devoid of muscular tissue. They also absorb cerebrospinal fluid from the arachnoid granulations. These sinuses receives valveless emissary veins to maintain an equilibrium of venous pressure within and outside the skull. We classify the dural venous sinuses into paired and unpaired groups. The unpaired sinuses are superior sagittal, inferior sagittal, straight occipital, anterior intercavernous, posterior intercavernous, and basilar venous plexus. The paired ones are transverse, sigmoid, cavernous, superior petrosal, inferior petrosal, spinoparietal, and lastly also the middle meningeal veins. Let's briefly look into the locations of all the dural venous sinus within the cranial cavity. Superior sagittal sinus is triangular in cross-section and is located in the attached convex margin of falx cerebri. It begins at crista galli anteriorly and posteriorly. On reaching the internal occipital protuberance, the sinus enters into the confluence of sinuses, where it usually becomes continuous with the right transverse sinus and rarely with the contralateral transverse sinus. It has three lateral venous lacunae on each side of the sinus, which are frontal, parietal, and occipital. These venous spaces or lacunae collect the blood from diploic and meningeal veins. Arachnoid granulations project into the venous lacunae. About the location of inferior sagittal sinus, it lies in the posterior two-third part of the concave free margin of the falx cerebri. It ends posteriorly into the straight sinus. This straight sinus is present at the junction of the attachment of the falx cerebri with the tentorium cerebelli. Postero-inferiorly, it drains into the left transverse sinus. The transverse sinus begins at the confluence of sinuses and runs laterally on either side from the internal occipital protuberance along the attached posterior margin of tentorium cerebelli up to the mastoid angle. It then becomes continuous with the sigmoid sinus. As already told, at the internal occipital protuberance, the right sinus is continuous with the superior sagittal sinus, whereas the left one is continuous with the straight sinus. All this time we have been talking about the confluence of sinuses. So what is it actually? The other name for it is Torgula hierophili, which lodges in a depression usually on the right side of the internal occipital protuberance. It is the confluence of sinuses, namely superior sagittal sinus, right transverse sinus and the occipital sinus. Some books says it is the dilated posterior end of the superior sagittal sinus. The smallest of all sinuses, which lies in the attached margin of falx cerebelli and ends in the confluence of sinus, is the occipital sinus. The most to be highlighted among the paired sinuses is the cavernous sinus. They are located on either side of the body of the sphenoid bone. Each sinus is formed by the separation between the meningeal and endosteal layers of the dura mater. It has a lateral wall, a medial wall, roof and the floor. The medial wall is related to the body of the sphenoid bone and is continuous with the diaphragma sella. The lateral wall extends anteriorly from the superior orbital fissure to the apex of the petrous temporal bone posteriorly. Several cranial nerves runs forwards from the cavernous sinus to the superior orbital fissure to enter into the orbit. Oculomotor nerve, trochlear nerve, and ophthalmic division of trigeminal nerve lie on its lateral wall. Internal carotid artery passes through the floor of the sinus, lodging in the carotid sulcus of the body of the sphenoid, and then turn upwards and pierce the roof of the cavernous sinus through carotidoclinoid foramen. The abducens nerve runs on the inferolateral side of the internal carotid artery. Unlike the ophthalmic division, the maxillary division of trigeminal nerve is not related to its lateral wall. Cavernous sinus has many communications with other sinus and veins of the head and neck. With the facial vein, it communicates through two routes, through the superior ophthalmic vein and angular vein. and through the deep facial vein and pterygoid venous plexus, with the transverse sinus through the superior petrosal sinus and with the internal jugular vein through the inferior petrosal sinus. Because of these communications, cavernous sinus is more prone for infections and thrombosis, which we'll see later. Next comes the other paired sinus called sigmoid sinus. Each sinus begins as a continuation of the transverse sinus at the mastoid angle and runs infromedially in the petrous part of the temporal bone in an S-shaped manner. It becomes continuous with the superior bulb of the internal jugular vein. Other paired sinuses are superior petrosal and inferior petrosal sinus, where the superior petrosal sinus or small narrow sinus located in the groove on the superior border of the petrous part of the temporal bone, and it drains the cavernous sinus blood into the transverse sinus on either side. Inferior petrosal sinus is located in a groove along the articulation of the petrous temporal bone and basi occiput. It is the first tributary of the internal jugular vein and drains the blood of the cavernous sinus into the superior bulb of the internal jugular vein. The intercavernous sinuses connect both the cavernous sinuses along the body of the sphenoid. The basilar venous plexus contains interconnecting channels and lies on the clivus of the skull. It interconnects the cavernous sinus with the internal vertebral venous plexus through the inferior and superior petrosal sinus. The last but not the least is the sphenoparietal sinus, which is situated on the undersurface of the lesser wing of the sphenoid bone. It opens into the cavernous sinus. To understand how these dural venous sinuses drain the venous blood from different parts of the brain, we need to know about the venous arrangement of the brain. Generally, the veins of the brain are of three sets, those draining the cerebral hemispheres, brainstem, and the cerebellum. The set of veins draining the cerebral hemispheres are called cerebral veins, which are classified as superficial and deep groups. The superficial veins are three. They are superior cerebral, superficial middle cerebral, and inferior cerebral veins, which drains the cortical and subcortical parts of the cerebrum, while the deep group drains the diencephalon and the basal ganglia. Superior sagittal sinus drains the medial and the superolateral surfaces of the cerebral hemispheres through the superior cerebral veins and also from the scalp through the diploic and emissary veins. Also, it communicates with the cavernous sinus through the superior anastomotic vein called as vein of Trollad. The diencephalon and the basal ganglia, drained by the deep veins, empties its blood into the great cerebral vein of Galen, which in turn drains into the straight sinus. The straight sinus also gets the blood from the inferior sagittal sinus and also from the superior part of the cerebellum. The transverse sinus drains the inferior surface of the cerebrum through the inferior cerebral veins and also the inferior part of the cerebellum. It also gets the cavernous blood through the superior petrosal sinus. It also communicates directly with the cavernous sinus through the inferior anastomotic vein of Lab. The sigmoid sinus receives the blood from the internal ear and the mastoid antrum through the mastoid emissary veins and the condylar emissary veins. It also gets blood from the cerebellum. Venous blood from the lateral surface of the cerebrum is emptied through the superficial middle cerebral vein into the cavernous sinus. It also receives the venous blood from the orbit through the central retinal vein and the inferior ophthalmic vein. And also the most important drainage of the face into the cavernous sinus is through many routes, which has been already discussed. It also gets the blood from the sphenoparietal sinus. The cavernous blood is drained into the internal jugular vein through the inferior petrosal sinus. The other venous sinuses gets the blood from the adjacent areas of the brain. Likewise, all the venous blood coming from the various parts of the brain into the dural venous sinus are finally emptied into the internal jugular vein. Considering the clinical implications of these dural venous sinuses, the serious encounters of them will be the thrombosis. The spread of infection from the draining areas will be the causative factor for this thrombosis, which will cause a procoagulant drive leading to the formation of thrombotic effect. Thrombosis of superior sagittal sinus due to the infected scalp and diploic tissue will cause impaired absorption of cerebrospinal fluid, while that of the sigmoid sinus due to the infected middle ear or mastoid antrum will cause impaired drainage of the CSF, which may also develop hydrocephalus. Transverse sinus can also be affected in the same way as the sigmoid sinus. So this syndrome of raised cerebrospinal fluid pressure associated with sinus thrombosis following an ear infection is called as otic hydrocephalus. Cavernous sinus thrombosis presents with a characteristic picture. The blockage of the venous drainage of the orbit causes periorbital edema, chemosis, and proptosis. Pressure effect on the cranial nerves related to the sinus also occurs. Severe pain in the forehead and eye will be present because of the involvement of the ophthalmic division of the trigeminal nerve. Ophthalmoplegia occurs because of the pressure effect on the oculomotor, trochlear and abducens nerve, resulting in painful extraocular movement of the eyeball. Fundus examination shows papilledema, venous engorgement and retinal hemorrhages because of the acutely obstructed venous drainage of the central retinal vein. Through the intracavernous sinus, a unilateral cavernous sinus thrombosis may also become a bilateral one. Such a drastic effect of the cavernous sinus may be due to the spread of even superficial infection from the dangerous area of the face and orbit because of its numerous communications. Internal carotid artery is related to the floor and roof of the cavernous sinus. Any fracture of the skull or penetrating injuries of the skull base will cause rupture of the internal carotid artery within the cavernous sinus. So this causes a carotico-cavernous arteriovenous fistula, which results with a pulsating exophthalmos. A loud bruit is easily heard over the eye, and again other features like ophthalmoplegia, orbital and conjunctival edema may occur due to the venous pressure being raised to the arterial level. A non-specific granulomatous inflammation of the cavernous sinus is called as Toloso-Hunt syndrome. The clinical picture in this will be the same as that of the thrombosis. Ipsilateral involvement of trigeminal and abducens nerves called as Gridnigo's syndrome is often associated with the thrombosis of inferior petrocell sinus.